Hello, Tom LaVecchia here with the latest edition of the New Theory podcast. Today, we have a guest that I saw online, had to invite him on the show, Anthony Hootie Russo, who is going to give us the inside look of the Gambino crime family during, I think, aside for the 60s and that kind of stuff, might have been its heyday, and even more so in Queens, New York. Anthony, welcome to New Theory podcast. How you doing today?
All right, Tom, how are you? Thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. So we're having some technical difficulties. We'll try to work through it. But so, Anthony, let's start off with, give us your formative years. Where did you grow up? How did you grow up? And then how did you kind of stumble into the mob?
Well, I grew up in Ozone Park, Queens, but more towards the Brooklyn side of it. It was called City Line.
Okay.
My parents, both Sicilian. My father immigrated here after World War II. My mother's family was here before that. I'm 100% Sicilian, both sides. I just grew up. It was a big mob area that I grew up in, and I thought being in that life was the greatest thing in the world. Being in the street, I thought was part of being in that life if you were Sicilian and Italian. So I kind of don't remember anything else as far back as I could go as a kid. Kindergarten, 5 years old, running football sheets, messages, going to the store, picking this up, picking that up for the local wise guy, or, things like that. And when I grew up, there wasn't as many made guys as there is today. It was like a really big deal. Back in the, early 80s, mid 80s to the early 90s, it was a big deal to be a made guy. So like if one guy in the area was a made guy, he was like the boss to the area, where in today's day and age, I never even heard of bookmakers being straightened out, but these days they straighten bookmakers out. They straighten anybody out.
Interesting. So where in Sicily? Cause I know this is back in the day, but if you trace where somebody was in Sicily, you could almost trace to, what crime family they were with. Were you Palermitano, like from Palermo, Catania side?
My father was born in Palermo, but his family was from Petanico.
Okay.
It's a little town right outside Palermo.
Partinico?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. I was actually there.
You ever see? Oh, all right. I was going to say, because it's the one part in The Godfather when Frankie Pandangelo's brother comes in.
Yes.
And he says that he was from Petanico. Yes.
Yes.
So that's the town my father's family was from. Yes.
Yeah, I was there, and it's interesting because they're, the mob is obviously super strong there, but it's like embedded in society. Yeah. So you grew up, that's all you knew, right? So give us, so was your father a street guy? Like, was your uncle? Like, give me like your first. So no family was involved. You just happened to be hanging out in the street locally and got picked up and just got into things here and there, correct?
100%, yes. My father was a 100% legitimate guy. Despised the mafia, didn't believe in the mafia. Believed in it, meaning because he knew all about it. Because where he came from, it was a very strong town. They actually had murdered two of his cousins over land back in Petanico, where he's from. Partinico, that's how it's pronounced. And his uncles were involved here. There was a murder many years ago in the 80s at a local barbershop in my area called Fathers and Sons. That was his cousin, which was the side of the family that we didn't associate with because my father didn't believe in that life. Oh, wow. And he wanted us as far away from it as possible. But I seen a guy going to work every day, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and coming home with nothing, and didn't believe in that life. And then I see street guys that are sitting around all day hanging out, looks fun, guys are doing things, women, cars, and I'm like, where's one life going and not the other? You know what I mean?
So this is I don't call it traditional, but this is, when I talk to John A. Light, talk to Gene, talk to Barillo, talk to even Michael Francis, who was on the podcast. It's all kind of that similar thread, right? Either family related or in the street. So I'm with you on that. So I wanna go a little further. Who were some of the bigger notable people when you were super young? And then who were some of the mentors that you had that people may know or not know?
When I was growing up, it was, Vinny Sarah, the skipper with the Bonanno family. Ron, my personal friend and somebody I had looked up to my whole life was Ronnie One-Arm Trucchio.
Yes.
He was the biggest name in my area at the time. Skipper with the Gambinos was doing life now.
Yeah.
Jojo Carrazzo, of course, that was his. He was, the big shot in that neighborhood at the time. Fat Andy Ruggiano, where I moved as I got older, closer to 88 Park, where all of them guys were from. John Sr., of course, when I was a kid, he was, in the streets. I mean, that area was just Joey Scopo, who, God rest his soul, had happened to get clipped back in the 90s. He had a social club on 101st Avenue with the Colombos. So it was just, like I said, a serious mobbed up area, and I would say Ronnie One-Arm Trucchio was who I looked up to and wind up, being close friends with most of my life. And he was a mentor in that life for me as I was growing up in it. Absolutely.
And so you started out young. So give us like your first the first stuff you did, what kind of money you made, and how old were you?
Well, I learned about football sheets. I don't know if you know what football sheets are.
I have a decent understanding, but if you want to go a little bit into it.
Yeah, football sheets are these papers that have two forms on it. You pick your Saturday teams, you pick your Sunday teams, up to the minimum of $1, up to whatever, your runner puts a cap on it. You go 12 out of 12, 3 for 3. It's like 4 to 1, stuff like that. And you get a slip, and then the other slip goes to the runner, gets put away. And I would actually run those slips at 5 years old from run this over to the cafe, run this over to, the Banano Social Club, go by Vinny's Social Club, drop this off at the pizzeria, things like that. Because it was just neighborhood guys, knock around guys, not necessarily mobbed up guys, just guys that were around. And that's how I started out. I strayed away from that for a while. I got into drugs big. Not using, selling, learning the ins and outs of, mescaline, marijuana, then moved on to cocaine, and then eventually crack cocaine.
Okay, how old were you at that point? So I want to kind of build.
When I got involved with the heavier stuff, about 12 to 13. Mescaline and weed, I was about 10 or 11. Yeah. I mean, I was on the streets my whole life. Just, there was nothing else. I didn't see being a doctor or a lawyer or an electrician or a plumber in my future. I see myself as a street guy, and eventually, hopefully one day.
Yeah. So being a teenager, yikes, being a teenager and buying like weight to sell, I guess I'm assuming you were distributing, not retail, right? I'm guessing. Who did you get it
from? That was more towards like 6. Like when I was 12 or 13, I would just go into East New York because I had a good relationship with the drug dealers there. They usually wouldn't sell to a white guy with light eyes and light hair and my complexion. But I wound up getting in good with like these Jamaican guys, and I would buy like nickel bags of weed, but they were like huge bags. So they looked like 20 sacks. So I would bring those back into Queens and sell them for $20. Or I would bring them to my school where kids kind of knew. So I'd sell them for 10.
Okay, so we're doing
and then I had a guy who had mescaline and acid. We pay $1 a piece, and I'd sell them for $5. So that was kind of like my intro into that. And then, as I said, 91, my mother passes away. We move out of City Line and more into Ozone Park, which is a little bit of a nicer area. Now I get into Fat Andy Ruggiano's area, which was 88 Park. And there was a social club over there. We used to keep the front as an arcade, and they took action out of the back. And I wind up hooking up with some older guys there. They got about 10 years on me. All my friends are a lot older than me. You know what I mean? So these guys got about 10 years on me. They took a liking to me, and I got out of the drug game at this point at like 14 for a little while. And they showed me the book. I started learning the bookmaker operation, how to write book, how to take, 3-ply paper, writing sports, reverses, what they pay, the odds, laying runs in football, in baseball, laying goals in hockey, 6 to 5, buying half a points. Like, they taught me every ins and outs, how to run tapes, because now we're not overseas yet. So everything gets recorded, the bets, how to make sure that the tape was on when the call came in, all things like that. And I got mentored, and it happened to be a Nicky Carrazzo place. It was under Nicky. I didn't know at the time. And these were legitimate guys. They had jobs. They were just bookmakers. They didn't, get involved in drugs. And it was a clean park, like I said. It was Fat Andy's park. And now at this time, he goes away. He gets that last bid, whatever it was, 13, 14 years. And it was a pretty good park. We kept it clean. We kept drugs out of it. So I was kind of out of that stage for a little while. But I still dabbled a little bit, still went back to the old neighborhood and, started still pushing, powder and hard, which was, crack cocaine at the time. But that's where I got mentored into the bookmaking and the Shylocking business. And from 14 on, that was like more fun than the drug business, the sports, the gambling. And then eventually you get into the gambling yourself.
Of course. And
along the way, you meet May guys, bookmakers, Shylocks, guys of all sort colors. And,
So I want to give a little bit of so you're giving a little bit of the business end of things in terms of how it operates, which I really appreciate. So, 18 years old, how much were you making?
Well, at 18 with the bookmaking business at this time, I was just getting into to have my own operation. I never really liked to do sheets with other people, but I was writing work for about $4,000 a month. That was just writing work.
Okay. Not bad.
Yeah. Doing in shifts, Saturdays and Sundays. Well, at this point, I'm already seasoned. I got 4 years experience, so I can run the whole wire room by myself at this point. So you don't need to have 2-3 guys there during the week. On a Saturday or Sunday, when you're doing college, you need 3 or 4 guys. It's just too much.
Yeah.
But running, during the week, if it's baseball season or basketball, the 7:10 game, the 8:05, and then the West Coast games at 10:10. You could easy, to run in and write the work like that. Make sure the tapes are running. So by then, with the bookmaking operation, I'm making about 4,000. Shylocking 300-400 here, 1,000 here. Maybe I was making about 400 or 500 a week with the Shylock business.
Yeah.
And then I was still dabbling at this point heavily into like mids at this point, meaning not the high end marijuana, but the mids.
Yeah.
Going like the middle. It's not the dirt. It's not the high end. And I'm doing. They used to come in compressed 30-pound packages. So 30 pounds here, 20 pounds here. I'm dabbling with that. And, on a good month at that 18, 20,000, 25,000, it matters. And, it matters how much work I can get, meaning, drugs. And there's always clientele for that. So it didn't matter where I needed to bring it. It all mattered. Can I get enough?
Wow. So you're making like $300,000 a year cash at 18.
Yeah. And I had a union job making $100,000 a year at 18. I was working for Local 79 laborers.
Was that hooked up for your mob friends?
No, that was all me through. Actually, it was an Irish friend of mine that got me in, and then I did all the work from there. Foremen were into drugs, and wind up getting my shop steward card. And I'd show up once a week, give the foreman an 8-ball Coke, and pick up a paycheck. You know what I mean? Which, when I got pinched in 2002 for bookmaking, they threw me out of the union.
Got it.
Yeah, they made me turn my book in.
So I want to, because let's be honest, right? We'll get it to like the now. Things are a little bit watered down, right? But the 80s into the 90s, I had John A. Light on multiple times, and he kind of pictured as this shit was tight until the early 90s. So to be a Gambino soldier, a made guy in the 80s, tell me, I know you weren't, but you hung out with those guys. I mean, that was still the real deal. Walk us through what went along with that. Why was that such a big deal back then?
I think it was pretty much a big deal to the turn of the century. So it was huge. Like I said, when my guy got straightened out in 1989, it was like the whole neighborhood got straightened out. Like that was our guy now. Yeah. For years we're battling the kids from Howard Beach where everybody straightened out. Their fathers, their uncles, and we're Little Ozone Park in the East New York area, and we don't have that. So one guy gets it, and it's like, we're good. That's our rabbi. Any beefs, we could go to him. He's going to help us. That's, and you're thinking like this at 13 years old. That's a little insane. Kids aren't even leaving their houses at 13 in today's day and age. But this was the mentality on the streets then. So, like, it was like a big deal, even the people in the neighborhood, the older women, the men, happy. Now we got somebody we can go to if there's trouble, if there's guys causing trouble on the avenue, or guys are selling drugs in front of your house, or you can go to the club, you can see Ronnie, make sure to get straightened out, no drugs in the neighborhood, things like that. So it was it was a really big deal. Like, you know, and if you met a made guy and you knew he was a made guy, you know, the highest respect did you have for that person. And you can see the difference from then till now. And I still had a lot of respect for those guys that I knew were straightened out back then in today's life, you know, in the life today, because I knew what they were then. You know what I mean? Just because new guys came in and watered it down, it shouldn't have taken away from the guys that actually earned it back then. And now, by no means necessary am I glorifying this life. I have children. I have people that I talk to and try to mentor and help out now since I've been involved in all of this. I don't want nobody to get involved in the life. You know,
no, I mean,
back then, all I'm
now,
trying to say is,
yeah.
all I'm trying to say is the difference that it was why you would get involved then and reasons why you wouldn't get involved now.
Well,
because if it was up to me,
yeah,
I wouldn't have got involved at all.
One of the things one of the things I get fascinated, this has been I'm first generation as well, Italian, not Sicilian, but not Milan. And one of the things I get fascinated is kind of like the role in Italian society, you know, especially the 80s, 90s, and now it's like kind of watered down. But like, what's an example of a neighborhood person, let's say a civilian, right? But they know Ronnie, or they know you who knows Ronnie. And what's an example, and you give a specific example if you want, leave out names though, where they came to with like a non-mob problem, and like did they get involved with like domestic disputes? Did they get involved with who dented whose car? Like what are some of the like, you know, you watch a Godfather, right? He's got a line out the door, and this guy hurt my daughter, and this guy screwed me on business. What are some of the things back then, if you have any good stories, where you kind of went to the local wise guy, he straightened it out, but what were some of those things?
Well, they definitely helped out civilians, Italians,
Yeah.
other crews coming in. Like, there was a rule. I know a lot of people believe that they shake down their own kinds.
Yeah.
In my neighborhood, if you were an Italian-owned business, only if you were committing illegal activities in that business, if you were selling swag out of the back, fireworks, taking numbers, they would only take a piece of that.
Got
Your
it.
legitimate business, if it's a pizzeria, a grocery store, liquor store, nothing ever came out of it. They never shook anybody down in my area for legitimate money. That was like a big rule. But if you were the Asians, the Middle Easterns, the Muslims, the Spanish, they all had to kick up, no matter what, just for being in the area, because it was a stronghold of an Italian area.
Yeah.
So therefore, those stores all got shaken down, extorted, but never an Italian-owned business like you see the Black Hand and take it from his own people. Never seen that in all the years I've been on the streets. And I've actually collected as I got older, and I've never seen that. But I've seen civilians having problems with rent, store owners falling behind, and they want the landlord to be spoken to, see if we can. And Ronnie always helped the community, the civilians or the old ladies who had a problem on their block with guys staying out too late, blasting the radio, or like you said, there's been times of accidents and fender benders, and there's absolutely, I've seen them get involved and help and settle situations like that. Absolutely.
So I believe that, especially when I was in a neighborhood, and let's be honest, they're not necessarily doing it super because they're good guys. They're doing it because they have their reputation. You know, if you owe them a favor, they're pretty good about collecting. Let's be honest. When did that go away? When it became less about community and more about straight money?
They always were doing restructuring, from one boss to an acting boss to a street boss. There was one time that I remember things got so bad, guys weren't earning. Fireworks were dead at the time. You know, after Giuliani, there was no more fireworks. Swag was a thing of the past, where if a guy had a sheet, or a guy loaned out money, or a guy did something, sold stuff that fell off a truck, but that still was, happening at that time, that now he had to kick up from his legitimate business as well.
Oh, wow.
They started passing. Yeah, this was later on. Absolutely. Yeah, there was a lot of restructuring. I remember when Junior was in charge at the time, and Mikey Scars was like his right-hand man at the time, and they were restructuring the Gambino family, and there was a big sit-down. And after the sit-down, Ronnie, the skipper at the time, and his son was a May guy, and they came back and they explained, like, That was one of the rules. Legitimate guys, even if they 100% legitimate, you take nothing from them. But if he's got his 25% cheat, or if he's shylocking money for 2 points and he's getting for a point out of his liquor store, out of his grocery store, you get a piece of that now also. He becomes a silent partner for 10%.
Now,
and that went along with.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but so one of the things though is if I kick up, right? Is that my insurance? Like, if I have a problem, could I come to you? Hey, this kid's robbed me last week, or somebody spray painted the side of the wall, or somebody keeps like stealing my liquor out the back. Did you offer protection to those that kicked up, or that was kind of a different contract?
No, anybody, even if you had a sheet and you were being bothered, you automatically are around us.
Got it.
That's it. You got a problem, guys from another crew, guys from another family, they're bothering your store, they're bothering your family, they're bothering you, they want you to borrow money from them or put money in the street for them, you're off limits. You know what I mean? And once they're told that, it's an automatic, that's it. You don't go near that person anymore. And if you do, it's a sign of disrespect, and you can get in a lot of trouble for that. And you'd wind up having to pay a tax yourself.
So now let's go into your 20s, because you were making great money at 18.
Yeah.
Give us like your peak. I want to get to the peak. What kind of money were you making? Who were you running with? What does the money look like? Walk us through all that.
Well, at the peak, we would just, I have my own operation overseas.
Wow.
Yeah, bookmaking, small as 15, 20,000 a week. That's, great money now, yeah. That's bookmaking. I mean, guys were making 100,000 a week. Yeah. You know what I mean? A little piece of a card game. We were doing a card game. It was about 3,000-4,000 a week in that. Shylock money was about 2,500 a week in that. And then I was doing big numbers with marijuana. Now we're trafficking marijuana through Canada into New York. And we're doing about $3 million a year in that, about 100 pounds a week. We couldn't get enough of it over. So I remember, I tell the story how it worked. I was flowing big into the drugs and everything. And one of my close friends decided to get out of the drug game, go into the bookmaking in Shylock, and was going to be straightened out soon if he kept his nose clean. So it was the month of October. And in that month, I think I brought in 100,000. And then in November, when I went over to do the bookmaking, and I changed everything, I stopped all the drugs, and I'm going to collect on their Shylock money for them, and I'm going to take action for them. And I'd have a sheet. I'm going to work their office because, I knew the game already. And we're not overseas yet with them. This is right before we went overseas. And I get pinched in 3 weeks in the office with them. I made 2,800 for them.
Hold on really quick, because I want to make sure I appreciate this. You got multiple streams of revenue coming in. You're finally starting to hit your stride. You're making like FU money, and then you get pinched. Okay, what happened?
Well, I stopped the FU money.
Okay.
That was October.
Got it.
Now, November, I go into the office. I changed everything. I stopped, there was no drugs at all involved right now. So now I'm just taking action, trying something new. We got little ventures. We're opening up a bar. I get a piece of the bar. We're doing Christmas trees. We're doing flowers for Easter, like all things like that, because they're trying to turn the money over legitimately like that, And I'm there 3 weeks. I make $2,800 for the month and get pinched. My first real pinch. Because I got pinched for bookmaking back in the day and fireworks, but it was a desk appearance ticket back then. It wasn't like it was. This was like the early 90s.
It was federal, right, or state?
It was state. It was called in the state. RICO's considered enterprise corruption in the state. That's a RICO charge.
Okay.
Meaning it's OC. And the feds, OC is RICO. In the state, OC is enterprise corruption.
Got it.
And that follows you everywhere. Can't get no programs. Like when I went up to do a 2-year bid, I was trying to get shot, come home and disqualified from everything. So yeah, it's just as bad in the state as it is in the feds, just not as hard as sentencing.
So you went away for what, 2 years, your first bid?
I did a 6.5, my first bid. 6 months on Rikers Island, home in 120 days and 5 years probation.
Got it.
And then my next pinch while I was on probation was too flat that I went up north for.
Okay, so another part that I'm a little fascinated by is, we saw Goodfellas where the mobsters go to jail and they get treated like, gold, right? But state's a different ballgame, as we know. How were you treated, and how are mobsters treated generally in state jails?
Right. Well, in state prison, just as I carried myself, they knew I was an Italian. I didn't carry myself as a mob guy, or if I was mob connected. They knew I was there on a drug charge. I got treated as a drug dealer. I had my few scuffles. You stand up for yourself, and they don't really try to make victims out of Italian guys. They actually are more friendly towards the Italian guys than than the Irish or the Jewish or any other kind of white race that would come into the prison. And like I said, you stand up for yourself. And if you know how to jail and you're walking around like you know what you're doing, you might not even have a problem. But to me, you go to a place like Rikers Island or you go upstate, everybody has a problem, at least one. If you tell me you never had a problem, you were hiding in yourself. No matter how cool you are with anybody, there's always a problem. You know what I mean? But you do get treated a little bit better being an Italian. And you don't even got to present yourself as a mob guy. They automatically think that. You know what I mean? With an Italian last name like that, like mine or anybody else's with a strong Italian last name. So, yeah. And you know what?
Yeah. Oh, you're